One of the most interesting and diverse kits in all of Warhammer 40,000 is the Astra Militarum Ogryns. This kit gives you a variety of options to build standard Ogryns, Bullgryns, and even comes with parts for their unique character Gnorc Dead Dog. This kit is also very compatible with fantasy ogres, allowing for an opportunity to add more chaotic and barbaric tendencies to these hulking abhumans. For even more options and variety, you could also include the Ogryn slaves from Necromunda, showing a more beat up Ogryn that has been beaten into submission. Today I'm going to take an Ogryn from the 40k Astra Militarum Ogryn kit and make some small but powerful additions to him, turning this Ogryn into a renegade. This is Cursed Crusader Arts. I start by cutting off the core pieces that I would like to use for this Ogryn. I chose a chest that is quite exposed, along with suitable arms for the weapons that I would like to give him. I now like to build models that are interesting, where you can look at them and tell a story with them, so I'm less concerned about giving this Ogryn weapons that will coincide with the tabletop rules. I have opted to give this one a slab shield and a grenade launcher, imagining that he is relying on the explosive blast to disorientate his foes before rushing in and beating his opponents into the dirt with a thundering shield charge. After cleaning up the chest, I glue it together with some polycement, providing a nice canvas for me to work with. I then set about setting this Ogryn aside from his fellows, considering reasons as to why he is turned away from the Imperium. Ogryns are typically loyal to a fault when treated well, so I imagined that he had been ridiculed and beaten by his superiors. To show this, I chose to use a head from the Crypt Horrors kit. This head is a little smaller than the standard heads that the Ogryns use, so I made some modifications by cutting away excess plastic from the back of the head socket and the end of the neck to accommodate for the new head. This inevitably gave the impression of a hunchback due to the smaller head being lower than usual in comparison to the bulging muscles across the back of the neck. This was then glued into place using sprue glue to seal the joint and fill in any gaps, turning the whole piece into a single unit. The next task was to work on the arm that would be holding the shield slab. I wanted to sell the idea of this Ogryn either charging or defending against a hail of bullets. I started this process by dry fitting the piece that would act as the attachment to the shield, but I had mistakenly chosen the wrong arm, so it wouldn't be as clean of a fit as it should be, but I carried on nonetheless, seeing an opportunity to manipulate the angle of the shield. I added a small piece of wire to the end of the wrist, allowing me to pin the shield to it later when I had completed the modifications I had planned out. Now it was time to add the grenade launcher. I didn't want to overdo this piece as it would be held quite low and positioned towards the back of the model from the perspective of the viewer. I cleaned up and glued the pieces together as was standard procedure and removed any Imperial iconography. Returning to the slab shield, I knew this was going to be the most important part of the model, as it would be the first thing the viewer would be seeing. I decided to add to my storytelling elements by taking an Imperial Guard helmet and modifying a resin skull to fit inside. This would make it very clear that this Ogryn's allegiances was no longer in favour of the Imperium of Man, but that alone would not be enough. I was fortunate enough to have some parts from a set of skeletons, likely from the Gravelord's army. I took the top of the banner with an exposed ribcage and was excited to find that the width was perfect for the slab shield. I made some minor modifications to the shield and removed most of the skull insignia on the front, giving me room to attach the new one in its place above the ribcage, giving the impression that the last guardsman who had mocked this Ogryn had been made an example of. Although plastic glue was used, due to the uneven nature of the shield, I also made some use of superglue to reinforce the bonding between parts and secure them properly. I had decided to remove the ring with trophies from another ghoul head. This would be used to adorn the barrel of the grenade launcher, and to help unify the whole model and bring the original weapon farther away from the royalist look. I also took the time to add a few grenades, pouches and trophies to the belt of the Ogryn. With all these parts completed, I dry fitted the miniature using some blue tack so that I could evaluate the whole figure. I was pleased with the overall stance and mood of the figure, but I decided it was missing a few things. First of all, the shield needed something a little extra. There was a lot of negative space underneath the skeletal remains of the guardsman, and I also felt that the back of the figure was a little too exposed for my liking, and it would make sense to me that this Ogryn would likely use any resource he had access to so that he could protect himself. I went about protecting the Ogryn's back by using a shield from my skeletons. I was particularly impressed by the studded shield and figured that it could have come from a wide variety of sources throughout the universe. I added some bullet holes and cut deep cuts and scratches to make it appear as though it sustained a considerable amount of damage. I furthered this by using my pliers to gently bend and warp the plastic, giving the implication that some heavy blows had also struck the Ogryn in the back, bending the metal a great deal. I attached this to the back of the Ogryn, using the strap that came over his shoulder and around the back. As for the slab shield, I needed to find a way to fill in the bottom half of the shield where the skeleton had stopped. I had initially considered adding some legs to the skeleton, but I figured that it might look a little too odd, needing a considerable amount of work to make it appear as though it had been attached naturally. Instead, I opted to look to the skeleton kit once more. The ribs of the now guardsman had come attached to what appeared to be the top of a banner, and so I used the flag to conceal the gap, allowing the imagination to decide if there were legs attached to the macabre trophy, or if the victim had simply been ripped in two. The flag itself was a little longer than the section of the slab shield that I intended to cover, so I used the holes in it to guide me into cutting away a small section that was no longer needed. Some dry fitting and a little trimming of the top of the flag allowed me to use the sprue glue to convincingly fuse the flag to the poles, making it all appear as a single coherent piece. The conversion is now complete, and I'm happy with what I've made. The Ogryn is slightly disfigured with a smaller, angular face and missing nose. He is adorned with many trophies of victims, including an Imperial Guardsman brutally killed and attached to his stolen shield. Imperial iconography has been removed, bragging this Ogryn is a traitor. But I was pleased to have been able to resist the normal disfigurations and spiky bones that is normally attributed to the ruinous powers of chaos, as not all who turn away from the Imperium are worshippers of the Chaos Gods. He snarls and glares through the shield visor, raised up against the invisible enemy beyond our vision, maybe blocking a terrible strike in melee combat, or perhaps it is to block a deadly volley of bullets fired wildly down upon him. His stance is firm, and he does not fear the retribution of his former Imperial masters. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it gave you many ideas. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more, subscribe and leave a comment below on how you would convert this Ogryn, and I'll see you next time.